What is going on, baseball fans? Jeremy Laracuente here for the Baseball Banter Broadcast. And on this broadcast, we're going to be bantering about my top 10 catchers right now. MLB Network puts this list together each and every single offseason, and their algorithmic program entitled The Shredder is the one that has the final decision. But I encourage you, make your own list. See just how difficult it is to separate your personal bias from the statistics and projections for the players. As we get into this list, we're going to begin with my number 10 catcher right now. Now, number 10 on my list is Travis d'Arnaud of the Atlanta Braves. Now, this is going to be an interesting upcoming season for d'Arnaud, as the Braves did just trade for Sean Murphy. But when we look back at the 2022 campaign, d'Arnaud had a B-WAR of 2.9, 60 RBIs, 18 home runs, and OPS plus of 119 in 119 games. This is a guy who is known for his defense as well as his hitting ability. And to me, it's very simple, very clear that this should be a guy that gets a ton of playing time. Now, I said the Braves just traded for Sean Murphy, so it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of balance that dynamic, or if d'Arnaud is a guy who they now look to move to maybe get back some other assets. But without question, Travis d'Arnaud is one of the 10 best catchers in all of baseball. Now, number 9 on my list is a guy who I believe is going to have a very big year in 2023, and that's Cal Riley of the Seattle Mariners. When we looked at the way that this player went through the 2022 season, this is a guy who really started to come on as of late. I think that when you look at what he was able to do in the postseason, kind of some big games down the stretch for Seattle, helping push them towards making the postseason for the first time since 2001. This was a guy who really started to cement himself in a big way for the Mariners. I think that as the 2023 season gets underway, Cal Riley is going to take on the predominant catching duties for the Mariners. I think that his defensive ability paired with the prowess that he has is really going to solidify himself in a big way as one of the 10 best catchers in all of baseball. Now, as we look at number 8 on my list, it is William Contreras, now of the Milwaukee Brewers. We would see a big 3-team deal between the Braves, Brewers, and A's when it came to making a trade of catchers, and we would have William Contreras go from the Braves to the Brewers. In 2022, in 97 games, Contreras had an OPS plus of 138, 20 home runs, 45 RBIs. To me, this is going to be the guy who's going to get the majority of the catching time for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2023. I think when you look at what this player is still a developing and growing player in Major League Baseball, but his ability is without question. I think that this is going to be a guy who truly starts to solidify himself as one of the very best catchers in all of baseball. So look for a big season from William Contreras in 2023. Now, as we get to number 7 on my list, it is the second coming of Buster Posey, and that is Adley Rutschman. I think that when you look at the former number 1 overall, this is a player that absolutely has the makings and the foundational pieces to be part of the Orioles' next championship caliber team. I think that when you look at what he did in 113 games in 2022, an OPS plus of 128, 13 home runs, 42 RBIs, 4 catcher framing runs, and a baseball reference WAR of 5.2 in just 113 games is tremendous. When you project forward this guy, to me, this is one of the best catchers, and arguably in a couple of seasons will likely be the best catcher in the game. That's how highly I think of Adley Rutschman. I think that there's an opportunity for him to really start to come on, cement himself as the very best catcher in all of baseball starting in 2023. As we get into number 6 on my list, it is the other Contreras brother, Wilson Contreras. Contreras is making the jump from the Cubs to the Cardinals, jumping sides on the rivalry. But I think that when you look at what the Cardinals were going to need in 2023, they're going to need an offensive force at catcher. Coming off of having the legendary Yadier Molina retire, there was going to be a vacancy in that spot. What better way to fill it than with an offensive force, especially with the potential upcoming changes with strike zones and potential robot umps and having that electronic strike zone. Catcher framing is going to be less and less important, but having a guy who's going to be a force in the middle of your order is going to become more and more valuable. The best way to do that is to jump ahead, Wilson Contreras was without question the best available catcher on the free agent market this offseason, and the Cardinals needed to fill that spot and did it in a tremendous way. I think that when you look at the impact that he can have for that Cardinals lineup, is going to be a tremendous bat that they put into the middle of that order. As we look at number 5 on my list, it is a guy to me that is truly underrated, Alejandro Kirk of the Toronto Blue Jays. When you look at what this player does, this might be a player that you might overlook just by looking at his appearance. But there's no doubt about it. This is a guy who has tremendous catching ability, was able to produce 9 catcher framing runs in 2022 to go along with an OPS plus of 126, had 14 home runs, drove in 63, and had a slash line of 285, 372, 415 with a baseball reference WAR of 3.9. Very little question that when you look at the way that catching breaks down in terms of Major League Baseball right now, this is a guy who fits both ends of the spectrum. A solid defender, solid offensive producer. And when you can combine that in a position that is truly demanding like catcher, you have an offensive force and a guy who is going to be providing tremendous levels of defense. Alejandro Kirk is without question one of the 10 best catchers in Major League Baseball. However, when you look at the long-term future for this player, to me, it feels like a guy who is going to be transitioning off of the position in the next coming couple of seasons. But for 2023, without question, Alejandro Kirk is one of the 5 best catchers in Major League Baseball. Now, as we get to number 4 on my list, it is the Platinum Glove winner in the American League, Jose Trevino. When you look at what Trevino is able to do for the New York Yankees, yes, offensively, this is going to be a less than league average batter. There's no doubt about it. He finished the 2022 season with an OPS plus of 90, and that was coming off of a very, very strong first half offensively. But the simple fact is that this player is one of the best defenders we have seen at the catching position in a very long time. And with the new metrics through StatCast that we've gotten, the OPS, the catcher framing runs that Trevino was able to put together was 17 catcher framing runs. And when you look at the difference between Trevino at number 1 with 17 and the next best catcher in terms of catcher framing runs was 5 runs less. So that was the equivalent of the 2022 Yadier Molina defensively. That to me is an incredible transition from what the Yankees have had recently with all of their catching woes. Having the best catcher in Major League Baseball defensively is a big step up. But again, when you look at the offensive production, this to me is the reason why Trevino wasn't able to kind of jump up even higher on this list, is because you do need something offensively coming from this player. Below average offense, but super tremendous defense is why he ranks so highly on my list. I still feel that at this present moment, catching is still a defensive first position, and you can kind of get away with having a defensive first player when you have a ton of tremendous offense the rest of the lineup, and that's exactly what the Yankees have right now. Being able to have a guy who is a Platinum Glove winner really solidifies the Yankees and Jose Trevino as a very good position to be in 2023. As we look at number 3 on my list, it is Will Smith of the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is going to be one of the best offensive catchers that we see in Major League Baseball in 2023 and beyond. I think that when you look back at his 2022 season, 87 RBI, 24 home runs, 4.2 baseball reference WAR, an OPS plus of 120. This is a guy who is an offensive force at the position. One of the best offensive players at the catching position that we've seen over the last several years. However, when you look at his defense, that is really where things start to kind of bring him back down. Obviously, when you have this level of tremendous offensive ability, you're still going to rank very highly on this list. But -2 in terms of catcher framing runs placed him at 42nd best in Major League Baseball in 2022. If Will Smith can kind of bring those numbers up, even just to league average, maybe a little better than league average, you see him as potentially the number 1 catcher in all of baseball. But as it stands right now, less than league average defense, but super plus offense is really where you kind of have to put him in kind of this top middle half. Coming in at number 3 on my list. Now, number 2 on my top 10 catchers right now is Sean Murphy, now of the Atlanta Braves. When you look at what this player does, he is a combination of offense and defense. 8 catcher framing runs, an OPS plus of 120 in 2022 to go along with 18 home runs and 66 RBIs. I think that when you look at what he is going to be for the Atlanta Braves, is going to be a guy who hits in the middle of their order, who provides tremendous defense with a very, very good pitching staff. Being able to kind of manage both ends of the spectrum really leaves Sean Murphy as one of the very best catchers in Major League Baseball. Hence the reason why he comes in at number 2 on my list. I think that when you look at what he is capable of doing and the way that he projects in 2023, this is going to be a guy who absolutely could be the number 1 catcher in all of baseball. The Braves were able to not only make this move to be able to acquire his services, but also extended him, meaning they continue to extend their time frame with having the tremendous team that they already have for very cost controlled. Being able to have a guy like this who has both the offensive capabilities and the defensive prowess, this is a top tier catcher for the Atlanta Braves, and the reason why he comes in at number 2 on my list. Now, as we get into the number 1 catcher in all of baseball, it is still JT Realmuto, the Philadelphia Phillies. There's no doubt about it. JT has been arguably, in my opinion, the best catcher that we've seen over the last 5+ seasons in Major League Baseball. The ability to combine offense, defense, base running, all of it. To me, this is a 5-tool player when it comes to Major League Baseball. And yes, that term gets tossed around, thrown around a ton. But when you actually look at the way that things balance out, especially coming from the catching position, with all the wear and tear and the demands on the body that it does, being able to have a player of JT's caliber at the position brings so much more value to the Philadelphia Phillies than if he was at any other spot. Being able to hit for a decent average, being able to hit for power, for speed, being able to steal bases. Not only you add that in with the defense that he has, this to me is one of the best catchers that we've seen in all of Major League Baseball history, not just presently. But that being said, JT did have a down season when it came to his defensive metrics in terms of catcher framing runs. But pop time is still the number 1 in the game. Being able to throw runners out is a skill, and a skill that JT has had in spades his entire career. When you look at what he was able to do in 2022, a slash line of 276, 342, 478 for an OPS plus of 820. You also add in 22 home runs, 84 RBIs, and a baseball reference WAR of 6.5. Is one of the best in the major leagues in 2022. Going into 2023, I think that it's very easy to label JT Realmuto as the number 1 catcher in baseball. But I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments, or you can find me over on Twitter at banter_baseball to let me know who are your selections for the top 10 catchers in all of Major League Baseball. The Shredder from MLB Network will be making the official list, but this one is mine. So I want to hear from you guys. Let me know that down in the comments. Like I said, or find me over on Twitter at banter_baseball, and we can keep the conversation rolling. If you want to show more support here for us at the Baseball Banter Broadcast, you can head over to our merchandise shop, baseballbanterbroadcast.com, and use any one of the number of promo codes that we have up on the site to save on your shopping needs from us here at the Baseball Banter Broadcast. You can also head over to laracuenteledger.com, our blog site, to see articles written every day about different things in the world of Major League Baseball, as well as other things. So make sure you keep it locked in by hitting the subscribe button here on this YouTube channel, as we have just crossed over the 500 subscriber mark just a few days ago. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Let all of your baseball friends know this is the channel to watch in 2022 and beyond, as we continue to look at the latest news, notes, and my personal thoughts, theories, and opinions on the game of Major League Baseball. Peace.